So, thank you everyone for inviting me here to answer a few questions for Yuvaan, which, of course, I am told has become the biggest youth led literature and film festival in India. So, I wish you all success with this festival, and I'm happy to answer some of the questions that you have sent in to me. The first question was, we saw in the private series that Ashwin has co written this book. How does that process work? Well, it's actually rather simple. James Patterson, who I co authored this book with, has made collaboration into a bit of an art form. And so it was very easy for me to actually work alongside him. The way it works is that one of the authors will typically end up doing the plot outline, and the person who does the plot outline is not the person who writes the first draft of the manuscript. So the first draft of the manuscript is done by someone else, and then it goes back to the person who had done the plot outline in order to do the second draft. So that's the way the story moves back and forth between two authors. It's far more difficult to write a book in collaboration rather than doing a solo job. But very often, the end product of a collaboration tends to be far better because you get the advantage of two completely independent perspectives. The second question on your list is, could he share something about his new book and when it will be coming? Well, I'm happy to announce that the next book in the Bharat series, The Vault of Vishnu, will be released at the Jaipur Literature Festival on the 23rd of January this year. And please do pre-order a copy either on Amazon or otherwise pick up a book once it becomes available. It is one of the toughest books that I've had to write because half of the book is set in ancient China, and that is a culture and a civilization and a country that I have not been familiar with. So it involved quite a bit of travel within China in order to be able to write that book. So half the book is set in China and half the book is set in India. The Vault of Vishnu, do give it a try. The book, The Rosabal Line, is based on the story of Jesus and Christianity. How did he fumble into that story? Well, again, this actually started out with a visit into Srinagar. And, I'm one of those who has always believed that we as writers don't go looking for stories. It is stories that come looking for us. The Vault of Vishnu is a prime example where I was looking at a particular documentary and I said, my God, we always know about India and China in the context of Buddhism and Buddhism having traveled to China, but there must have been so many interactions between these two great ancient civilizations, and that was the exploration that happened. In the case of the Rosabal Line, it was a chance visit to Srinagar and me landing up at a shrine known as Rosabal, which means Tomb of the Prophet. The common folklore around that particular tomb is that Jesus Christ lies buried there. There is a metallic plate outside the tomb which indicates a pair of human feet with the puncture marks, the cross marks, indicating the points at which the nails for a crucifixion would be hammered. I was absolutely fascinated by the story. I did not know at that point of time that I was interested in writing a book. I'd never written anything longer than a couple of pages before that. But what it did was it got me started on the process of research into that story. And that was a story that completely obsessed me for the next year and a half. And it was only after I had pretty much read everything that I could and talked to everyone that I could that I realized that I had so much material there that it made sense to actually convert it into a story. What is the one genre that you enjoy reading? Well, there are many genres actually. I would say that I'm much more of a non-fiction reader than a fiction reader. The reason for that is that a lot of the fiction that I write is based on material that has been derived from non-fiction. So I end up reading quite a bit on things like history, philosophy, science, uh, as well as interpretations of scriptures and what have you. In addition to that, of course, I love conspiracy fiction. So, I mean, hands down, Dan Brown is probably my favorite author in that space. In addition to that, I also love reading books which are in the realm of science fiction. I love reading material which is the typical, fast-paced mystery. But I also love the stuff which is paranormal and horror. So there are multiple genres. I wish I could read actually far more than what I do. I always have a long list of books that I eventually want to read, but unfortunately, my own books get in the way. So I end up doing far more reading in terms of the sort of research material that I need to plod through in order to write my books rather than the sort of books that I would actually read. Uh, the next question is, what motivated you to change careers and start writing full time? Well, my entire training was in the world of business. In fact, when I'm answering this question to you, I'm sitting in my office, which is the more mundane part of my life. And I typically, my training was an MBA in finance. I worked along with my family business for almost about 15 or 20 odd years. Uh, Frankly, at some point of time, I realized that there was a creative streak in me, and I could not work on that creative streak being in business. So, for the longest period of time, I continued to manage parallel careers. So, I would write my books in the middle of the night, up to 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I would still get up early and I would make it to my place of work so that I could put in a full day of work. That carried on all the way till about 2011 or so, 2011, 2012. That was the year when I realized that no, it's all very well that I was a businessman who was also an author, but now I wanted to be an author who was also a businessman. I have always believed in life that if you are a lucky person, you get to do what you love doing. And if you are slightly luckier than that, then you get to do what you love doing, but you're also good at it. And of course, if you're very lucky in life, then you get to do what you love doing, you're also good at it, and someone is willing to pay you for it. I have been in that sense very, very lucky that I was able to find something which ticked off all the three boxes. Finally, the last couple of questions. Was the Sialkot saga inspired by Cain and Abel? Of course it was. It was inspired by Cain and Abel, but it was also inspired by several other books that Cain and Abel was inspired by. So, for example, the notion of a family conflict as a result of a romance between boy-girl is something that has come down to us from Romeo and Juliet. Similarly, for example, if you look at the original Jeffrey Archer novel itself, that in itself is inspired by an earlier novel known as The Immigrant. And that is again one of those stories which I loved reading. So I think there are many, many such examples. Even in Indian cinema, look at the conflict between two individuals in movies such as Diwar. So that is an old trope, as it were. The question was that anyone can say that, well, a sandwich is basically two slices of bread, but one sandwich is not the same as the other because of the filling that you put inside. And that is where the Sialkot saga becomes extremely different. And finally, the question, who are the writers whose works inspire you and which books are on your reading wish list? Well, the authors that tremendously inspire me, of course, top of that list is Dan Brown. primarily on account of the fact that he is able to pique my interest and keep my interest alive right till the very end of the book without compromising on the pace of the book. I think that is very critical, particularly in the world of commercial fiction. Your biggest challenge is getting your reader to turn the page. So I'm inspired by Dan Brown in that sense. I'm very inspired by Salman Rushdie. Midnight's Children was an all-time favorite read of mine, and it is 180 degrees to the sort of writing that I do. But Midnight's Children, to my mind, is one of those books which probably inspires a tremendous sense of jealousy in me that I wish I could write like that. So I would say that's probably a book which I love. Another book which I think has inspired me a great deal is Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahans Yoganand, because that is again one of those phenomenal books which made me realize that just because I can't explain certain things in life doesn't make them any less real. So distinguishing between the real and the unreal is something which I have spent the rest of my life attempting to do through my books, even though I'm nowhere close to actually doing that. So there are many authors that have been a source of inspiration. Which are books which are on my reading wish list? Well, frankly, there are several books that are on the reading wish list, but frankly, that list is just too long. At any given point of time, if you get into my Kindle, you will find that there are at least a couple of 100 books that have been downloaded with all best intentions of reading them, but haven't been able to get down to them. So with that, I take leave of you today, and thank you very much for asking me to do this Q&A with you. And I wish Yuvaan all the greatest of success. I hope that you have a very, very wonderful, productive and exciting time. And remember to pick up a copy of The Vault of Vishnu in January 2020. Take care. Happy New Year. All the very best.